Good evening, everyone. My name is Wayne Bossinger. I'm co-president of the Squirrel Hill Historical Society. I want to thank everyone for coming to our meeting tonight. Enjoy. We have a very interesting meeting. As is our tradition, we always like to start the meeting by recognizing some of the officers and volunteers that make this all possible. Starting with our co-president, Jim Hammond, who's not been able to make it today. We have our co-vice president there, Helen Wilson. We have the other co-vice president, Betty Conley, back there. I don't think Evelyn Young is here. Jeannie Benstock, board member, is in the back. I don't think Toby Chapman's able to make it. Of course, Audrey Glickman behind the camera in the back there. And board member and email coordinator, Tony Indovino. And also membership coordinator, Stanley Klein. Our 2020 membership drive continues to move forward. We have more than 72% of last year's members have renewed. If you haven't renewed as of yet, you can find applications back at the table in the rear. And you can also renew online on our website. Later this week, we'll be sending out renewal reminders, but there won't be another newsletter unless you've renewed. I also like to mention in the back, we have copies of our 2 Squirrel Hill history books on the table in the back. We'd also like to thank a number of people who recently made donations to the organization. I'm not going to name them individually, but we did want to know that their contributions greatly appreciated. As far as upcoming programs, we have monthly programs booked through the month of September. Just mention these briefly. If you want additional details, you can see them on our website or our newsletter. We have the next month's meeting, April 14th. We'll focus on the Homewood and Smithfield East End cemeteries. Be presented by historian archivist Jenny Benford. The May meeting is titled 100 Things to Do in Pittsburgh Before You Die. Presented by editor and author Rosalind Nemacolin. June's meeting will examine the history of the future of the Carey Furnace steelmaking site over in Rankin. And one other thing I'd like to mention, because it's all you can hear about the news, is the coronavirus outbreak. And planning for tonight's meeting was easy because it's nowhere around this area here. We felt absolutely safe. We didn't have to worry. There's 10 cases in Pennsylvania. They're all 300 miles away in the eastern part of the state. But we do want you to know that we're going to be keeping a close eye on it. And we're going to err on the side of caution. Who knows? You can't predict what's going to happen in the coming months. But we will be keeping an eye on it. And if we need to cancel meetings, we'll cancel meetings. I don't know what we would do. Just cancel them or maybe film them so they're available online. We just have to wait and see. That brings us to tonight's speaker, who most of you are probably aware of, our co-vice president, Helen Wilson. The title is The Convoluted History of Squirrel Hill's Roads. So without further ado, here's Helen.
Good evening. Good evening. I can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore. It's supposed to be not politically correct. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the talk, The Convoluted History of Squirrel Hill. As you have been sitting here waiting for the presentation to begin, you've probably been comparing these 2 maps. This map, the first one, is from 1851, and I will be thanking, I have to introduce Lauren Winkler, who helped me immensely with this presentation. And she also did the homesteadhebrews.org mapping, if you've gone to that website, the map overlays. And she is a geographic information systems specialist.
Wow.
And, pardon me? Homesteadhebrews.com is the website she worked on. Plus, she did supply a lot of the data that I'm going to be showing you, including finding this map from the Library of Congress. The other map it's I think the last of these sort of paper maps that Pittsburgh, the city of Pittsburgh put out as city neighborhood maps. It's a composite of Squirrel Hill North and Squirrel Hill South. I just put them together. But after that, the city seems to have gone to a more interactive mapping. And the problem with the more recent maps is you can hardly see details. For example, Somerset has a lot more streets now, but it's hard to make them out because they add different things and they don't make the street names as legible as on the old map, which you can actually read those street names if you looked at them. But anyway, there's a lot of new streets in Somerset now. So there they are. So let's look at these two maps now. You can sort of see, if you look at that and that, you can sort of see how the border of Squirrel Hill, even without the line, is obvious. And that's because the Squirrel Hill borders go along geological formations such as valleys and ravines and the river down here, and up here Fifth Avenue, which is the edge of Squirrel Hill to the north. So if you add the border, you can see that almost without the red line. So another thing you might notice is there's some familiar names on this map. There is Brown, as in Browns Hill Road. There is Fleming, Douglas, Forward, Phillips. Up here you have Wilkins. And over here you have Murdoch and his nursery, as in Murdoch Farms. So there's familiar names. These were names of landowners in 1851. There were only a few roads in Squirrel Hill at the time. And interestingly, those roads still exist except for one. And this road doesn't exist anymore. And this one, I've color-coded them. So this is the one that doesn't exist anymore.
Boundary runs under Forbes Avenue.
That road doesn't exist anymore. And I'll tell you why. One of the reasons it's a diagonal road, and they're very rare in cities because cities like blocks. They like rectangles. You also have Forward Avenue, commercial, which runs straight across, ties into Saline here. Same road has different names at different times. And that's the next road. Saline comes up from 9 Mile Run and then goes down to 4 Mile Run. Shady Avenue goes straight up north. Boundary Street goes along the outside of Squirrel Hill. Fifth Avenue runs along the top of Squirrel Hill, and then Wilkins Avenue goes that way. And could you see okay? Okay. Notice that all those roads seem to converge in one part of Squirrel Hill in the early days. Where is that today? It's from Forward Shady to a little down from Forward Murray. So there must have been some sort of an early settlement there, and we're not quite sure. We don't have any information about it. But it was obviously a crossroads. Squirrel Hill's borders were based on the contours of the hill. And this is one of the maps that Lauren Winkler provided us with. Usually you put information on maps. We asked her to take all the information off the map so we could just see what the contours of the hill looked like. And there they are. And again, even without drawing the border line, you can see Squirrel Hill. You can see it. And there it is. And the roads were based on those contours. roads usually weren't deep in a valley because of flooding, and they weren't high on a hill because it was hard to get there. But think about, say, Commercial forward, how it hugs the side of the hill, Pecusset, the part that fell over and now it's a walking trail. Those are old roads that just go along sort of like, it's high enough to be away from floods, low enough to be a little bit sheltered. The road skirted Squirrel Hill or went up and over it. Squirrel Hill was not densely populated, so there wasn't much of a reason to go there. You just wanted to get over it to get to somewhere else. And if we zoom out a bit, what you can see is that around Squirrel Hill is this wide, wide valley, the East Liberty Valley, that was a major conduit to downtown. Settlers from Philadelphia would come this way and avoid the hill. The Pennsylvania Railroad came up that way around 1850. But if you were coming from Virginia or Maryland, you were coming from the southeast, and you came up, and after you crossed the barrier of the Monongahela River, you came to these bluffs along the northern end of the Monongahela River. So, how do you get to Pittsburgh from there? Well, you could go all the way around here, or you could go all the way here, or you could take a shortcut up and over the hill. So that's what mainly the roads of Squirrel Hill were used for in the early days. Were they Indian trails? Well, as you can see from this map, here's Squirrel Hill. There's no trails, no main trails. Even Native Americans had very well-developed trails even before the settlers came, because when you drive along the turnpike and see those rows and rows of mountains, anybody could get lost there. So trails were established early on and carefully maintained. So settlers, when they were coming to this area, would use those trails if they went where the settlers wanted to go. And what we think is that there were probably hunting trails and shortcuts over the hill, no main trails. Notice Braddock's Road here. That loosely followed Nemacolin's trail from Cumberland to Brownsville to Pittsburgh. And of course Braddock didn't get any farther than Braddock, North Braddock. However, Nemacolin's trail, and this is maybe a rumor, maybe hearsay, but it was believed in this monument to Catahacassa was put up in the early 1900s, but it was supposed to be on a shortcut to Nemacolin, on Nemacolin's trail to Pittsburgh, that went up and over the trail. Who was Nemacolin? You've heard of Nemacolin Wetlands and that wonderful resort, but he himself was a Native American hired by the Ohio Company in 1752 to build this trail from Cumberland to Pittsburgh. Think the National Road going to Brownsville, Route 40. Braddock loosely followed it as well. And this fountain is on East Circuit Drive in Schenley Park. And one of the oldest buildings in Pittsburgh, the Neal Log House, is also there. And it wasn't moved from there. So we think this trail was possibly a shortcut on Nemacolin's trail. Catahacassa himself was a Shawnee war chief who was an enemy of the United States, before that the British, until after the Revolutionary War. And then he became the friend and ally of the United States, and in 1900 he has a fountain made to him. The other, and I'm so glad to see Anita here, Greenfield historian, gave us this information about Cossack Street, which is the only street name in Squirrel Hill that we can find that has an Indian derivation. It's not a name of a person, but it means, it's an Indian word that means where a strait widens out. And you know, straits are water, but if you look at the Saline Street Valley from the intersection of Forward, Pecusset, and Murray, it does widen out as it goes down into the run. So, who knows if that was the reason that Pecusset was named that, or somebody just liked the name. It does come from Massachusetts. So I'm going to start and talk about the different roads that were the early roads and a little bit about their history. Boundary Street, here it is under the Shenley Bridge. It separates Squirrel Hill from Oakland. And if you look on this map, you'll see the word Peebles right here. Boundary Street in 1851 was the border between Pittsburgh, which ended in Oakland, and Peebles Township, which started right across the ravine, and Carnegie Mellon is on the Squirrel Hill, or the Peebles side of this division. And in 1868, Pittsburgh decided to annex Peebles Township. Now, Peebles Township was very, very large. It extended all the way from the Monongahela River to the Allegheny River, all the way from Oakland up to Lawrenceville, which was, it was a separate entity, right? Yes. Yes. Okay, and I'm calling on my experts. And all the way to the Wilkinsburg boundary. So in 1868, the city decided to annex Peebles Township, which had been divided into 3 townships by then, but the one that was mainly in Squirrel Hill was, at least in the Squirrel Hill southern part, was still Peebles. And then Liberty was a little bit up here, and then Collins was higher. But anyway, here's Boundary Street under the Shenley Bridge. Half of it is now the Junction Hollow Trail, with the Anderson Bridge back here. They closed off the lower half to make a walking trail, which has come back to haunt them now because there's a lot of controversy about reopening it in some way as some kind of a conduit to the new development in Hazelwood. Well, it was a road. I drove out.
They're planning a bypass.
Well, they're planning something. There's still a lot of controversy. So next street is the road that isn't there anymore. And this road crossed Boundary Street in Junction Hollow as an extension of John Kerr Street in Oakland, ran through the ravine that was filled in to make the cut at CMU. The road continued through Shenley Park to Northumberland and then diagonally to Forbes Avenue. So here's the cut, here's where they're filling it in. Here's where it's still not filled in. I think this picture was undated, but I think it's around 1957. But you can see the part that's been filled in. The trolley tracks that went up there are not there anymore. But what happened to it? Well, there's Scott Hall. What's left of the ravine is somewhere, you can see it a little bit, and Ween Hall, which is back here, took some of it. But the ravine is pretty much gone, and the road itself disappeared under Carnegie Mellon's campus. Loosely followed Tech Street, Margaret Morrison Street. Okay, so here's the first electric trolley tracks. They were laid on John Kerr in 1893, crossing Junction Hollow on a trestle. Here's the trestle. So the trolley would have come up this way and come up through what's now Carnegie Mellon's campus. Here's Boundary Street down here. These are the railroad tracks. First temporary Shenley Bridge. So, why not Forbes? It's a bigger street. Well, that first Forbes Street bridge, which you can barely see back here, couldn't carry the weight of electric trolleys. But by 1898, a new bridge was built, and that one could carry trolleys, so the trolley route was, trolleys were rerouted to Forbes, and that road just, the rest of the road where the ravine is, just disappeared. The old road vanished under CMU, Shenley Park, and residential development. So Forbes Avenue Commercial. Forward's named for Judge Walter Forward, who owned a 160-acre estate where Alderdice is now, that area. He was an amazing, really a noted person. He held many political offices, including United States Congressman and Secretary of the Treasury. If you're interested in knowing more about him, we had a talk in 2013 by Dr. Miles Richards, who talked about remembering Walter Forward, and that is that's one of the videos you can access through our website. So where does Commercial Street start? Right about here. So if you're coming up what you call Commercial, which I do, it's not, it's really Forward. So the landslide that they're fixing is on Forbes Avenue. So the reason Commercial stops here is if you look at this map, it went up and straight through 9 Mile Run Valley. It's now a trail. It was first, let's see, this part of the road is gone right here, but you can see that this is the Fire Lane Trail, and that does hook up into the 9 Mile Run Trail going east. And it goes all the way to that culvert near South Braddock Avenue. And that was originally Forbes Avenue. Where did this go? If you remember, I'm going to sound very Pittsburgh here, where the old Foodland used to be in Edgerton. When you notice that brick road with the trolley tracks. Now, those trolley tracks didn't go down this trail, didn't go down forward, but that would have hooked into it there. Yeah. Todd, you can nod. My son, Todd Wilson, is a traffic engineer, and we do explore. I have like this group here that it's like...
There and the parking lot in Fern Hollow as well.
Okay, parking lot in Fern Hollow as well.
The road that goes up to the parking lot.
Oh, okay, okay. So that would be what street? Biddle? Okay, Biddle Street too.
Middle on the map there.
Okay. All right. Which one's Biddle?
Oh, dash line in the middle.
Dash line in the middle.
Right there.
There it is, yeah, yeah. Meaning it wasn't built yet at that time anyway, that's 1923. Okay, so that explains this big bend here, that very odd bend. Forbes Avenue is a very interesting place.
Yeah.
A lot of history. It's a nondescript road now for the most part, but you had natural gas drilling. There are capped gas wells down there, 2 of them. Mineral water spring. In the old days, mineral water before antibiotics was considered a medicine, and this spring was supposed to be incredibly pure, beautiful, effervescent water, so they bottled it there and sold it all over Pittsburgh. Then you had the Gary and Nancy Tuckfelt keeping tabs Holocaust sculpture at the corner of Forward and Beechwood, and that's at the same property as the Community Day School, which was St. Philomena's Roman Catholic Church. Only Roman Catholic Church in Squirrel Hill. Walter Forward's estate was all around here. Taylor Alderdice High School, or Pittsburgh Alderdice as it's known today. Forward Lanes, the Squirrel Hill Theater, and the Watkins development, which included the Moorfield Hotel and the parking lot and all the buildings along both sides of Forward there, and also the apartment buildings behind the Moorfield, was all the Watkins development. Think an early waterfront in Homestead. But anyway, that was all around this area of Forbes Avenue. First school in Squirrel Hill is now on, it was on what's now Eldridge, but that was a prior alignment of Forbes Avenue before they straightened the road. So that was, it's torn down now, an apartment house. Let's see, Simon Gertie's log cabin was at this corner of Forward and Beechwood, because as Beechwood goes, there was a Forward and Beechwood here, that one's over on this side. Simon Gertie was an early settler of Squirrel Hill. No, it's not. No, it was replaced by 3 gas stations. So Forward Avenue Public School was down on Forward, which was Selene by then. That's torn down as well, although the retaining wall exists under the Parkway Viaduct. And DuPont Powder House, which we're trying to find more information about. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. Saline Street. It was originally called Salt Works Road because there was a salt works at the mouth of 9 Mile Run. Down, I think it's on the map. Let's see. Yeah, it says Salt Works. I think by then it was Irwin in 1851. We don't have any kind of picture of it. We do have a report from 1816 that shows the salt works was already in operation and how many bushels of salt it was producing. This is a painting at Carnegie Museum of Art. Salt works at Salt Mill Run, Salt works at Salt Mill Run, say that fast 5 times, by Russell Smith in 1834. The reason I'm showing that is because there was coal mined all along the Monongahela Bluffs in Greenfield and Squirrel Hill, and that coal was dirty. It was bituminous. It wasn't anthracite. It burned very, very dirty. It wasn't used for heating houses at the time. It was used for boiling off the salt water, the brine water, to get the salt. There were no salt mines under Squirrel Hill. There's no salt deposits. What it was there was a salt marsh. The water leached down through the sandstone, which is the Salzburg Formation, and brought up mineral water. And so the early settlers and later people would bore these very deep, 300 to 600 foot deep wells, and bring the water up and then boil it off. But even in 1816, I'm sorry, I was kind of losing my train of thought there. But anyway, Squirrel Hill was a very smoky place from all of this coal dust, and you know what that smells like probably, if you remember. Saline Street once ran from the mouth of 9 Mile Run to the mouth of 4 Mile Run in Hazelwood. The Saline Street ravine provided passage across Squirrel Hill. This is a map in the Pittsburgh Press from 1950, and you can see Braddock's Road. Here's where it goes up the hill, and then it had a nice, easy time going back down to 4 Mile Run. That part of the road, if you wanted to continue on to Hazelwood, is now gone, but that was 2nd Avenue. 2nd Avenue came all the way from town and all the way up along Braddock's Road to Braddock. It was Braddock's Plank Road. This part disappeared when the new Glenwood Bridge was built in 1966, and that road was closed off. So now it's the Duck Hollow Trail, and it's a really pleasant walk, a very nice walk along the river. But in the old days, it was a busy place. There was a foundry, a machine shop, this was Trolley route. B&O Railroad was here. There was a public school. The public school had been down by the river and was moved, well, it was rebuilt up at the top, and that school's still there as an apartment building. This was also the headquarters for the Brown family's steamboat operation. So there's still a coal conveyor belt down there. That's that large dock kind of thing that you see. It's a conveyor belt. Map shows the Saline Street ravine. And what's interesting to me about it, if you're interested in geological stuff, is that it's in 2 watersheds. It starts out in the 9 Mile Run watershed. There's Squirrel Hills has kind of a crest, a watershed divide that's the highest parts of Squirrel Hill. And it also has a little bit of the Negley Run watershed. So Saline is in to get up to the crest by the 9 Mile Run side, and then the rest of it is the 4 Mile Run side. This is Lower Forward Avenue, Saline Street in the ravine looking east, 1908. A lot different from, that's not exactly the same place, but it gives you the idea that things have changed since 1908. A little bit more about the Saline Street ravine. It had to be spanned before Murray Avenue could become a trolley route to Homestead. First bridge was built sometime before 1913. It carried only trolleys. That's the first Murray Avenue bridge. Nowadays, it did go through another bridge, and now it's this bridge here. But this gives you an idea of what the Saline Street Valley looks like towards Squirrel Hill now. This is Beechwood Boulevard. This is Forward. And down here would be the remnants. The Parkway ramps would be sort of the remnants of Saline Street. There's the Squirrel Hill Tunnel there. And that's what's made Saline Street pretty much disappear. So it's quite a lot of concrete there. Squirrel Tunnel was completed in 1953 after 8 years of construction at a cost of $18 million. A very expensive project for the time. 4,225 feet long, second longest vehicular tunnel in Pittsburgh after the Liberty Tubes, 5,889 feet. There's the Alderdice Band playing in 1953 at the opening. Thanks to Lauren, who ferreted out this information that Squirrel Hill Tunnel is the 7th longest vehicular tunnel in Pennsylvania that's not been abandoned. So most of them are, of course, on the turnpike. Shady Avenue was originally Shady Lane before the city fathers changed the name. The poem below was written in 1926, very flowery. But every time I'm on Shady Avenue when I'm driving down, it's like this is an earworm for me because I think when Shady Avenue was Shady Lane before the city fathers changed the name. So now when you drive down, you'll think of that. It ran north. It ran up to another bustling community, which was East Liberty. Downtown was building up. East Liberty also was, much earlier than Squirrel Hill because it was on that flat plain. Shady Avenue is also the Blue Belt. The Allegheny County put in the Beltway system in the early 1950s, and the Blue Belt's the innermost original belt in the system. It makes a complete 38-mile circle around the city. Comes up across the Homestead Grace Bridge, Browns Hill Road, Monitor, and then Shady all the way.
Yeah.
And it's still well marked. There it is by Polzetic. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I see the other signs farther up Shady. Fifth Avenue was once 4th Avenue. You can see that on the map, 4th Avenue, as shown on that map. Before that, it was Farmers and Mechanics Turnpike, so that kind of gives an idea of what it was used for in the early days. 1835, they're going to be building it to connect to Greensburg Pike. Wilkins Avenue and related roads. I thought it was really interesting that on this map from 1851, only 2 roads are given names. 4th Avenue, which is now 5th Avenue, and Wilkins Avenue. None of the other ones. So the only thing about Wilkins that we know in those days was that it was once Judge William Wilkins' private road to 5th Avenue from his 650-acre estate. And he called it Homewood. Again, Judge Wilkins, like Judge Forward, was a very, very active political figure. He was a distinguished Pittsburgh jurist, United States Senator, and Secretary of War, and those were just some of his duties. He had this elaborate mansion near Reynolds Street in Point Breeze, and he entertained lavishly. So Edgerton Avenue, Homewood Avenue, and Northumberland Street share the street. The names changed. Homewood Avenue did connect. It went all the way to Homewood Avenue that still exists, and then it went along Northumberland to Shenley Park. But the Homewood Cemetery sort of put the end to the middle part of the road, and the part of the road that's in Squirrel Hill became became Edgerton, and then became Northumberland. So you can see this website overlays maps, and you can see how they cut and pasted this. So you can see the change there. South Dallas Avenue referred to Mathilda Dallas, who was married to Judge Wilkins. She was the daughter of George M. Dallas, Vice President of the United States.
Oh, really?
And Dallas Avenue, South Dallas, runs along Homewood Cemetery. And that was part of Wilkins' land. And look who they entertained: General Jackson, General Zachary Taylor, Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, John C. Calhoun, and Thomas H. Benton. So they were quite lavish entertainers. South Dallas Avenue was once part of the Lincoln Highway. Route 30 went through Squirrel Hill. The original route, the first route, went from Penn Avenue to Baum Boulevard, but in 1913, until that, I'm sorry, that's when it started in 1913. But when the Boulevard of the Allies opened in the 1920s, the second generation route turned off Penn Avenue to South Dallas, to Wilkins, to Beeler, to Forbes, through Oakland to the Boulevard of the Allies. And the Lincoln Highway was the first paved transcontinental highway for automobiles in the United States, 3,000 miles long from New York City to San Francisco. Now, the interesting thing is that it shares the parkway today with, in Pittsburgh with Route 22, which is the Penn Highway. So that's why the official name of the parkway is the Penn-Lincoln Parkway. Murray Hill Avenue is named for James Murray's estate, which was located between Wilkins Avenue, you can see it here, and 5th Avenue. Here's the development starting over here. It was one of the first streets in Squirrel Hill to be developed in the early 1900s. It came up off 5th Avenue. Painting of Murray Hill Avenue by Henry Kerner, really well-known Pittsburgh artist who did live in Squirrel Hill. He lived on Murray Hill Avenue for a while, and this painting hangs in PNC Bank, along with another one he did of his neighbor's house across the street, which is now gone. And there's a third painting of Kerner's in the bank, so if you haven't seen them, they're delightful. Yeah. So there's this bustling East Liberty Valley, and across the street, right across 5th Avenue, is this rustic hillside. So Murray Hill Avenue was called Rus in Urbe, a bit of country in the city. And you have, it's the only city-designated historic district in Squirrel Hill. The people who live on Murray Hill Avenue were worried that Chatham University was encroaching and tearing down houses. They wanted to preserve their ambience. So they banded together to form to apply for historic district status, which they got. And the important thing about this street is that it exhibits a number of domestic architectural styles of the early 1900s. English Tudor, Colonial Revival, Queen Anne Revival, and French Second Empire, among others. So that leads us to Murray Avenue. Murray, Magnus M. Murray, was the 4th and 6th mayor of Pittsburgh. He didn't serve consecutive terms. He didn't live in Squirrel Hill, but he married the niece of Judge Wilkins. Their son was James Murray, whose estate was near Judge Wilkins' estate. So when Squirrel Hill was building up, one of its new main streets was named Murray Avenue after Mayor Murray. And the street name first appears on the 1882 map, but it didn't extend from Forbes to Wilkins until 1890. And here you see that first trolley route going up what's now Northumberland and down Murray at first. But after the bridge was built, it was rerouted to Forbes down here. In the late 1800s, Pittsburgh was building up, and roads were named for noted politicians, statesmen, soldiers, and historical figures. So you have the first 4 mayors all having streets named for them, including Murray. Trolleys were the key to the development of the Forbes-Murray business corridor. That's Squirrel Hill in 1893, but that's not Forbes Avenue. That's the original trolley route going up through what's now Shenley Park. Just to give you an idea of how quickly things developed after the trolleys, here's 1882. Not much development here. That is 1910. These 2 churches are already built. That's 6th Pres here, 6th Presbyterian. Over here, where Carnegie Library is now, was Asbury Methodist Church. Was just as big. It was a big stone church. Let's see. And here is 1923. Murray Avenue at Forward Avenue. You can see the trolley line going up. This is the Moorfield Hotel being built. So things are building up. This is 1923. Look at the development. And you are here, right here. In 1923, Church of the Redeemer appears on the map. Murray Avenue at first was pretty much residential, but as the business district was building up, to make storefronts, these houses were lifted up off their foundations and either moved back or just lifted up, and storefronts were built. So here is Frame Smith and whatever is here right now, but you can still see those houses in the background. And the people who own Minio's told us that happened across the street at Minio's as well. The storefront was, the house is right still behind Minio's. You can still see it if you look up as you drive down Murray Avenue. Now, someone had asked me to just mention Whiteman Street, so here it is. It's older actually than Murray Avenue, but the name, the road appears on the map, but the name doesn't appear on the 1872 map, which is the first time the road appears. The official dedication was in 1885. It was named for glass manufacturer Thomas Whiteman, known as the father of the window glass industry in the United States. And he owned 30 acres on both sides of Forbes. Wouldn't that be nice today? So anyway, here's his property, and note the creek, completely culverted. And so there's Forbes and there's Whiteman's property. So by 1910, Whiteman had died, but his house is still there, and the property had shrunk to only 10 acres on Whiteman and Forbes. The house is no longer there. It was torn down. There's the house. There's, I think it was replaced by 3 houses. And here's Whiteman, and Whiteman School was named after him as well because he was a very he was a very charitable man who contributed to a wide range of worthy causes, including education. So he has the school named after him. If you've ever looked at Whiteman Playground, you've noticed it's sunken. Mm-hmm. And you might have wondered, why is it low? And some people know that it was used as a skating pond before. Right, that was one of the ice ponds. Yeah, and you can see it up here. Here's Whiteman's property, but this was on Wilkins and Whiteman. That was an ice pond originally. Squirrel Hill was high. It wasn't very well, it was sparsely populated. So there were ice ponds dotting Squirrel Hill. And what did you do before refrigeration? You called the iceman and he would bring you blocks of ice. They used these ice ponds to get that, to keep that ice cold during, they had ice houses to keep the ice cold. And I'll show you a few in a minute. But here is an ice pond that is at Wilkins and Denniston in 1910. And this is about how these ice ponds are disappearing and being replaced by expensive lots. Another ice pond on Solway Street opposite the Colfax School was recently sold to the Colfax School Board for $22,000. After, they say in the article that they had just quoted land prices by the acre 10 years ago, and here they were selling them like by lots. Whiteman is being worked on as we speak, and one of the plans for it is a wetlands. So I don't know if the water's going to be from the culverted creek, probably not these days. But anyway, they are planning a wetland area. There's the ice ponds. This isn't the one on Solway. This is the one. Here's Denniston and here's Beechwood. So there they are. They go from Northumberland all the way down to past, this is Linden here. So they continued between Denniston and Beechwood. Those were in the Negley Run watershed. The creek ran north, and this is about where here's St. Bede's. So this ravine that's all culverted, the Fern Hollow ravine is culverted all the way past St. Bede's. Can you imagine how much it was filled in? That was the 9 Mile Run watershed. There's Denniston. He was the son of Thomas Denniston, which is where the name comes from, pioneer settler in the East End. Recruited a regiment in the Civil War, was badly wounded, lost his right leg and use of his right arm, but he wanted to serve in the Army, so they made him a quartermaster. He was the Allegheny County Treasurer. Then he went west to mine silver for his health. And he returned to the Treasurer's office again, and he has this very nice, it's more than a tombstone, it's a monument to him with his Civil War cap up here and his medals. Forbes was another person like Murray who never came to Squirrel Hill that we know of. It was originally called Forbes Street, went all the way from town to the Wilkinsburg border. He was a British general in the French and Indian War, and he led the Forbes expedition that captured Fort Duquesne, and he's the one who named the city Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh in Scottish. But again, he never marched through Squirrel Hill. Forbes Street became Forbes Avenue in 1957, that late, and you can see the trolley tracks disappearing here. And I think the last was before, this is a 1966 picture.
The picture, the tracks going off to the right were the lines going down to Kennywood to Homestead. The other lines lasted until the end of January 1967.
67, okay, that's how it was.
66 and 67.
Yeah, because these look like they're still in use.
They are.
Yeah.
At that point, they were.
Yeah. Okay, so something odd occurred at the corner of Forbes and Shady. This says, for those of you in the back, this says 5800. This says 6,300. Well, where are those missing blocks? So what happened is, cities like blocks, they like grids. So you have coming out from town, 1st Street, 2nd Street, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 44th, 63rd. This was the East Liberty Valley, nice and level, nice grid. Top of Squirrel Hill is fairly level, nice grid. But this valley and this side had to meet up. And they meet up a little bit farther down where the hill ends. They had to come together and be the same block. So meanwhile, what was in the way was the hill where Chatham University, Woodland Road, Murray Hill Avenue, Negley Avenue are, and you can't maintain a grid system on that hillside. So these got squeezed out in Squirrel Hill and don't exist. So I've been talking about all of these things, so just a little digression into definitions. A road is just an open way. It's a generic term for vehicles, persons, animals. A street is a road, especially in a city or town, that's wider than an alley or lane and usually includes sidewalks. An avenue is a wide street, and usually streets run into avenues. The main street is the avenue. It's often tree-lined that provides access to smaller streets. Boulevards, different type of road, broad, often landscaped road, meant as a pleasure drive. And then there's the ways. Squirrel Hill has a lot of ways, alleys. In 1914, the city of Pittsburgh decided that alley had an unsavory connotation associated with criminal activity. And so they passed this ordinance, thank you, Lauren, another great find, that changed alley to way. And so my friend Tony and I have been walking these these ways, sorry. One thing that I find really interesting is if you have lived in Squirrel Hill a long time, you remember the brick roads. Well, they're mostly asphalted, but the alleys aren't, and you can see really interesting brickwork in some of the alleys. This is one that goes off Sandal Way off of Monitor. So it's very interesting to walk through these alleys. So here's Browns Hill Road intersection with Beechwood and Hazelwood. When Tony wrote the blurb to announce the meeting, he said, when you're sitting at a red light and you're looking at the roads, well, I said it this pretty much because I live near here, and one day I was sitting there thinking, there's so much road history here. Wow, there is Saline Street, the oldest road. Here's Browns Hill Road. Here, this is coming down from Hazelwood. It used to be just the trolley route, did not have any car road. But then after a while, they put the car road in next to it. Hazelwood Avenue, I don't talk about much because this is the only part of it that's in Squirrel Hill, this little tail end. It's the border of Squirrel Hill. The border of Squirrel Hill zigzags around Hazelwood to Saline, but it goes down to Hazelwood, another community on a level place, and Beechwood Boulevard around 1900 coming this way. Now this picture was given to me, it's an actual photograph, not from online, by Ron Freeman, and it is incredibly detailed. You can take a magnifying glass to this and make out this little sign here that says airports down the hill.
Oh my gosh.
County Airport, Bettis Airport. So, but another thing that's on there is this truck. And look at that car close behind it. There's DuPont. DuPont Explosives. There was a lot of building going up in Squirrel Hill at the time. Browns Hill Road was being widened, possibly in preparation for the Homestead Grace Bridge. But anyway, there's the DuPont Explosives truck. Beechwood Boulevard. In the late 1800s, broad boulevards were constructed to be a string of pearls connecting the string connecting the pearls of the city park, pleasure drives. And Director of Public Works, Edward Bigelow's plan was to have these pearls that you could just get in your carriage or your sleigh, and then after that, your automobile, and just have a nice Sunday afternoon drive all the way on this beautiful road that now has speed humps in it, but we won't go there. Beechwood Boulevard connected Shenley and Highland Parks. Well, the Daughters of the Revolution decided in the early 1900s that they wanted to name these boulevards after famous historical figures. And they changed this to Washington Boulevard, which it still is, and this part they changed to William Pitt Boulevard. But Squirrel Hill did not like that, and they petitioned the city to get their name back, and even offered to pay for the signs to redo the name change, and they won. So we have Beechwood Boulevard. So that leads to Frew Street. Where does the name Beechwood Boulevard come from? Well, William Frew's estate was called Beechwood Hall. So that is where Beechwood Boulevard came from. So it's named after an estate. And there is, that is William Nimick Frew. He was a friend of Andrew Carnegie. He was active at Carnegie Institute of Technology and a lot of other things if you glance over his bio. But if you know Frew Street, it runs up along Carnegie Mellon between the campus and Flagstaff. Mm-hmm. And it's also the border between Squirrel Hill North and Squirrel Hill South, right here, before it goes up through the park and then along Forbes. So if you're at Carnegie Mellon and you're parking on Frew Street, you're going from Squirrel Hill North to Squirrel Hill South. And again, I think this was courtesy of Wayne, wonderful researcher, thank you. There's 74 changes of names. Many of the new names are suggested by wars, local events in the theatrical world, characters in some of the plays that have been produced in Pittsburgh during the past season, which have been popular and unpopular, according to taste, and even some of the stars taking a prominent part in the production of Grand Opera just finished. Most of these are in the 22nd and 23rd wards. Before 1911, Squirrel Hill was the 22nd ward, instead of the 14th ward, and Greenfield was the 23rd ward. So that's why you see those numbers. So that's why I think Desdemona Street got its name. That sounds very operatic. Thanks to Lauren for this information as well. We have a list of, I think I counted right, 210 streets, avenues, lanes, roads, ways, places, terraces, courts, boulevard, and an interstate highway. 72.5 miles within Squirrel Hills. It's approximately 4 square miles. I was trying to do the math on that, and I forgot to finish that. Approximately how much does that mean per square mile? So that's quite a lot.
But it's nice to have.
Okay, so we're compiling information about Squirrel Hill's street names, and right now we just have raw data. You know, whenever we find something that refers to a street name, we put in loose leaf folders in the back of the room. If you feel like glancing at them, Tony's holding it up. But anyway, so if you have information, or if you want to research your street and give us the information, on our website, squirrelhillhistory.org, under the links for historical research, you can find some links that will help you research. There's the Squirrel Hill News newspapers are on the website. There's Historic Pittsburgh. There's this wonderful, I'm getting most of the maps that you saw from Pittsburgh Historic Maps, which overlays different times. So please help, if you would like to contribute, please do. And I want to end this presentation by again thanking Lauren and Wayne, our president, membership coordinator Tony Indovina, because we've been walking a lot on these ways and doing research, and traffic engineer, my son Todd Wilson, for their help with this presentation. Okay, thank you. So any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
I just have a quick one, and that is, so we happen to live near Aylesboro, but I'm trying to understand why Northumberland ended up a street when it had so much going on, and Aylesboro, which seems to have had nothing going on, ended up an avenue.
Who knows? But I do want to say that our research on Northumberland shows that that possibly was projected to be the business district instead of Forbes because of the way the trolley went. If you remember, the police station is there, and the fire station, and a little row of stores. But as soon as they rerouted the trolley, that ended that. So, but why it's not, I wondered why it was. I had to look it up on Google Maps to make sure it was a street, so I didn't get that wrong. Yes?
I went, Denniston, you know, where it breaks, it stops at Mellon Park and continues, was it continuous at one point?
Mm-hmm.
And there's another street called Luster that was the same way. There's a street called Luster.
Luster.
Yeah.
Well, streets usually were divided because there was either residential development going on, as in Marlborough Road and Marlborough Street, or we have a picture I didn't show you of the ice pond at Wilkins being filled in, and Linden. That road gets confusing because the development occurred at different times. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have an answer to that. Wayne, do you have any? No. No, okay.
Also Shady Avenue extension.
Shady Avenue extension, well that was...
Extension,
well,
another extension.
Well, Shady Avenue extension was Lauren's comment, and probably could have not once connected, but maybe projected to be connected until Minadeo was built. So kind of stopped that. Yes, Jean?
Would there be a street named after Gene Kelly?
Well, he had, Gene Kelly did have 3 different dance studios in Squirrel Hill, but Kelly Street is in, and I don't even know if it's in Wilkinsburg, and I don't even know if that's for Gene Kelly. I don't think so. Pardon? No, Wilkinsburg. There's a Kelly Street in, okay. So I know more Squirrel Hill streets, you know, outside of that. Yes?
The Greenfield Bridge was Beechwood Bridge, was that the end
Yeah.
of Beechwood?
Yeah, it was meant to be the grand entrance to Shenley Park, the Beechwood Boulevard Bridge for us purists. But everybody calls it the Greenfield Bridge because when the traffic reporters say where the traffic's backed up, they say Greenfield Bridge so you know where it is. But the official name, and you can see it on the plaque, and it's interesting that the new plaques have Greenfield Bridge in parentheses under Beechwood Boulevard Bridge.
And
Yes?
Why is Inverness Street, which is parallel to Bennington and Squirrel Hill Avenue, exactly the same kind of wide street? One is those, the other two are called Avenue. Inverness is called a street.
I have no answer. Do you have? You have? I'm calling on my experts. Anybody have a guess? Oh, well, just a minute. We don't know. It was just at the whim of the people who were developing, I
I look at the
think.
sign whether it's street or avenue, but it should be the same avenue as
It
Bennington.
should be. Well, mainly the avenues are the wider streets that the streets run into, but that doesn't always hold true in Squirrel Hill, at least.
It's possible that the houses were older.
In the street, so maybe it had to do with like the significance of it.
Well, that's true. Saline did have, it was, you see that Saline Avenue, you see Saltworks Road, you see Beechwood Avenue at first. I've seen that. So it depends maybe on the map maker as well. I'm not sure because, you know, you don't trust maps 100%.
Inverness
You-
is really nice with the open area just before you go into Plainfield. It's kind of open area. Inverness runs into that.
Okay.
Maybe it was the
Maybe there was an ice pond there. You know, I'm saying that that's one of the reasons, because there were ice ponds dotting, even like by Alderdice's, the place where you go into the athletic field, that was an ice pond. You know, they were just all over the place. You had a question?
Yeah, you had said originally that Squirrel Hill didn't have dense population, but obviously it's very densely populated now, especially in this part. Was that because of the trolley line, or is there some other factor that led to a lot of housing development?
Trolley line started it. And the other thing that started the development, well, besides the automobile, which could go anywhere, but Squirrel Hill was empty. Now, if you drive out on the turnpike, or how about 279, and all that farmland, I don't know if I had the slide in here where we have a picture of a developer selling land on Murray Avenue, and you could see the lots laid out, all empty. So if you had a chance to get a brand new house away up high, away from the city, if you could afford it, you would move to Squirrel Hill. Squirrel Hill was always marketed as an upscale place to live, and mostly starting in the northern part of Squirrel Hill. So yeah, it was the trolleys. Trolleys can climb hills. Otherwise, you'd have to trudge up or ride your horse up, and you know, you could, people there. We have newspaper articles about people getting lost in the old days. You know, so.
Yeah, when I was doing research for the trolley program I did maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and you know, you throw out the internet, you know, you can type in Forbes Avenue or Murray Avenue just to see what on newspapers.com, and a lot of the ads show up and they tell you we're near the trolley line.
Right.
And the trolley had also then been diverted from down in the valley, right straight down Forbes Avenue, and you know that was 2 lane at one time, with a lot of business. Forbes and Fifth at one time were both 2 trolley tracks in 2
Wow.
directions.
Wow.
So that got you in there very quickly, and in the town very quickly.
Right. It was just a. Trolleys really made not only Squirrel Hill, but other developments along the tops of the hills that bridges now connect. Because those trolley bridges were the first way that you could connect without having to go all the way down and all the way back up again. One more or 2 more? Okay, go ahead.
What did you say Peoples Township was subdivided into?
Oh, the northern part was divided into, that was Liberty Township, a little bit more than just North Squirrel Hill, and then Collins was at the top, up at the farthest north. But Lawrenceville was always by itself, that wasn't part of it.
Yeah, Lawrenceville, that got annexed in 46.
Well, let's see, Jim, are you giving a talk on the mysterious Liberty Township?
Yes, April 3rd at the East Liberty Historical Society at the East Liberty Presbyterian Church, and it'll be at 7 o'clock in the evening.
So if you want to learn more about the mysterious Liberty Township, Jim has written an article for us for our newsletter that was published was it last year?
Last year.
Yeah, so, I want to hear this talk because this township, nobody knows about it, only lasted a few years.
A little over 3 years.
Right before annexation.
It ran from December 1864.
April 3rd.
Oh, April 3rd, I'm sorry.
It's First Fridays, that's a good way to remember it, First Fridays at East Liberty Presbyterian. And somebody over here had a question?
The picture you had of the picture with the guys in it. What year was that? It said a year on the bottom. So those men, Carnegie.
Carnegie and Nimick and some of the fruit. I'll go back later and tell you, okay, instead of,
Actually, how long is Beechwood Boulevard from one end to the other end?
oh, you had to ask. Lord, do you know? I think it's about 3 miles. We were thinking, what's the longest road and the shortest road in Squirrel Hill? And I think Beechwood, because of all its curves, it goes from, I think it's 3 miles, but I'm not positive. It's at least 3 miles. Todd, can you do that on your phone quick? He'll tell us. Yes.
I was wondering about Murdoch's between Forbes and Bartlett, and then between Bartlett and Beacon, because it's 2 different types
Right.
of road. I was wondering if you could
One is a road and one is a street, I think.
Okay.
And in the old days, you saw it with a K at the end. I mean, Murdoch, first there was the Murdoch Farm, the nursery, there was a store down on Smithfield Street downtown, but if you look at maps, you'll see Murdochs all over the place, along just going all along Shenley Park. And so, it could have been a different Murdoch, different part of the road that got developed, we're not quite sure.
Oh, well, I was just wondering if you knew how old they were, since one is cobblestone and the other is brick.
Oh, wait, I do have to show. Oh, were we going back? How did that happen? Was it going back while I was?
Yes. You were
That's like doing one of those calls. Wait,
By call.
yeah, by call. But I wanted to show you since you asked. Wait, hold on. And we'll just. Oh, there's Nemacolin. Okay, this is 1911. Okay, but hold on. There. Okay, so these roads they're not necessarily very old just because they're not cobblestone, which is round river rocks, but Belgian block or blockstone, Ligonier limestone, they were from Ligonier. That's Hazelwood Avenue. Then that was the most expensive kind of street. So it was only used for streets of a certain grade, the steepest streets and the most used streets. Like Smallman Street, for example, was heavy usage, and Luster Street is very steep. Woodblock, only one in Pittsburgh still left, that's Rosalind Place. Asphalt was fairly early, only it was very soft. If you read the Ambersons of Amberson Avenue, it talks about putting her heel in the asphalt and going like this and making holes. And then there was brick, which was cheapest. So I imagine these bricklayers laying each brick by hand. So, okay, how about just one more question? Anyone? Yes?
I just had a question about the ice ponds. I saw the whole string of ice ponds, and I was just wondering if they existed today, would we have the drainage problems that we have in the city today with the overflows and the flooding and stuff?
Well, the ice ponds weren't natural; they were dammed.
Oh,
so
thank you.
yeah, they dammed up the creeks. But there, if you saw the map of Squirrel Hill, there's creeks all over the place, and they might be the part of the problem of the basements in Forbes and Murray, the 2 corridors, because there were creeks that ran down both of them, and they're still there.
Yeah.
So sometimes when it's floods, you get problems, mud and stuff in the basements. Okay, so anyway, thank you very, very much.